Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Laura Musica Show, your favorite update in the battle for life, family, and freedom. So honored to have you with me once again. I'm Laura Musica, attorney and human rights advocate, and I also serve as president CEO of Sidewalk Advocates for Life, the nation's largest peaceful sidewalk outreach organization. Many of you may know that a few people have gone undercover in the abortion industry. In other words, used undercover investigative journalism to blow open some of the abortion industry's most gruesome and shocking practices. The idea here is that if this industry wheels and deals and profits off of the crisis of pregnant women and the death of their preborn children, again, the abortion industry doesn't make any money when someone chooses parenting or adoption. With such a lack of a moral compass, they are probably engaged in a lot more, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire. And that idea has seemingly proven true over and over again. Lila Rose and her organization, Live Action, have caught Planned Parenthood aiding and abetting underage sex trafficking, teaching minor children BDSM, overbilling Medicaid, lying to pregnant women about fetal development, and so much more. Then many of you may think of David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt, who went undercover and caught Planned Parenthood officials allegedly negotiating the sale of aborted fetal tissue. They released explosive undercover video footage through their cover organization, the Center for Medical Progress, in 2015, showing Planned Parenthood figures discussing these sales. And again, this is a violation of federal law, and it triggered state and federal investigations into the Planned Parenthood abortion empire. Earlier this year, David settled with the state of California and miraculously walked away without any prison time or fines. The reason they had a near-decade court battle is because California was not friendly to this kind of First Amendment activity and seemingly used lawfare, so to speak, to cover up the videos, to cover up the wrongdoing at Planned Parenthood, and to force taxpayers to continue sponsoring the late-term abortion industry and experiments on aborted babies afterwards. Now, there are other heroes in our midst as well, fighting the good fight on this front, and one of those is medical malpractice attorney Mike Seibel, who's here to give us an update from his vantage point as someone who helped to shut down late-term abortion in New Mexico and knows a thing or two about the sale of preborn babies for experimentation. I also recorded a testimonial from a father who recently lost his daughter to a late-term abortion. A man named Tommy, whose girlfriend was pressured into an abortion later in pregnancy, and who figured out that his daughter, Clementine's baby body parts were sold for experimentation. And he is doing everything he can to honor her memory and shut this down. You'll hear a powerful clip of his testimony, which we recorded a few weeks ago, in the middle of this episode. So let's go ahead and dive into what should be, yes, a hard conversation, but a necessary and powerful one. And at the end of this episode, we'll talk about what you can do to help stop this inhumane practice, at the very least, inhumane, right? Inhumane practice, and save lives. Let me go ahead and introduce our special guest for today. Michael Seibel is a private medical malpractice attorney who has dedicated his time and effort to the pro-life community. He has worked with various organizations to close late-term abortion training programs, close fetal tissue networks, and hold abortionists accountable. He worked extensively with a select panel on infant lives to obtain 2 criminal referrals for the sale of fetal tissue against the University of New Mexico and late-term abortionist Curtis Boyd. He has obtained the biggest abortion malpractice settlement in New Mexico history for negligent referral. Mr. Seibel's work has been detailed in hundreds of articles by the Albuquerque Journal, the Associated Press, National Review, Live Action, Life News, and the American Family Journal, as well as the Daily Caller. Let's go ahead and welcome to the program, Mike Seibel. Hello, Mike. How are you this afternoon? I guess the morning when this airs, right?
I'm doing wonderful today. Thank you very much for asking.
Yes, well, great to have you. Like I said, you are one of my heroes. You're a hero of our movement. So honored to have you with us. So let's just dive right in here. How does a street lawyer, as you call yourself, get into this kind of work? How did you end up here, Mike?
Short answer is when God called, I said yes. But the long answer is a little bit more detailed. On June the 23rd, 2015, just a short 10 years ago, a pro-life activist came into my office and said they're selling baby body parts out of the University of New Mexico. This was before David Daleiden. This
Wow.
was before any of the videos, anything else. And they said, can you help us investigate? So I sat down. I prayed about it. That's the first thing I did. I went to daily mass, and right before daily mass, somebody handed me an article about Curtis Wayne Boyd. And if you don't know who Curtis Wayne Boyd is, he is the godfather of abortion. He has committed 250,000 abortions personally himself,
Wow.
700,000 at his clinics. He is the worst abortionist in the history of the United States, and he also was the mentor for the late term capital of North America, which was we had the most abortions in North America here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, that were late term. So I read about this. It was an article that Karen Garnett wrote, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and I got mad. I got angry. I said somebody ought to do something about this. And I don't know if God talks to you differently, but I have that small voice in the back of my head that says, "Hey, stupid, you can do something about this. You're an attorney."
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm
Mm.
going to do something about this. I'm going to do everything I can to shut Curtis Wayne Boyd down. So we started this investigation. I sent thousands of IPRAs, Inspection of Public Records requests, to the University of New Mexico. And then the day before Thanksgiving in 2015, I got confirmation in writing that Curtis Wayne Boyd was providing late-term abortions, just all-term abortions, to the University of New Mexico without women knowing, so that they could be transferred to a 19-university fetal tissue network. And we exposed this in 2015. When we exposed it, the select panel of infant lives, Frank Scaturo, March Bell, and Marcia Blackburn, called up and said, we'd like you to help us out in this fetal tissue experimentation case.
Wow. I mean, wow. Wow. And let me just ask this before we kind of step back and look at the broader picture here of late term abortion in America and fetal tissue sales, which obviously are going on. I know people just listened to what you said, and the question is this legal? Is this really going on? Like, what would you say to somebody who's sitting there in disbelief that this is a thing?
Well, it's really going on. I mean, I can tell you that there was a fetal tissue law produced in our litigation that we had over the years, which showed thousands and thousands of babies being transferred back and forth between the University of New Mexico and different organizations throughout the country. Curtis Wade Boyd was supplying them. This is happening in almost, I would say a handful of universities now. University of San Diego, University of Pittsburgh are continuing to do fetal tissue research. Is it legal? Well, that's a question.
Hmm.
The way they were doing it here in the University of New Mexico, it was not legal. And there's another factor to this is I still don't think it's legal what they're doing now. There was a case out of California called Moore versus the Regents of California, seminal case in research. And it allowed the individual Moore to sue the University of California for not telling him that his blood samples were being used in research. And the University of California made millions off of this. So because they didn't inform the individual that they had this relationship where they were making money off of the fetal or off of the research at that particular time, he was allowed to sue the University of California. There's a similar case out of southern Arizona with the Yapavi Indian tribe that they sued for using their blood samples. So I mean, is it legal? Probably, yeah. But is it redressable from people who give up body parts or blood or everything else? Yeah, because they're not telling these women that we're using your body parts for fetal tissue research.
Wow. Wow. And just so everybody understands, and again, in a second here, I want to back up and have you kind of outline this even more. But why is this philosophically, theologically a problem? Like the idea, there's people out there who would say, well, these babies are being aborted anyway. We might as well put their parts to use, right? Like, what would you say to somebody who asks that question?
Easy question. Really, really easy question. I'm not going to go to theological. I'm going to go to the practical. One
Yeah.
woman who we represented at that particular time was locked in a room for 4 hours and told she was having trouble deciding whether or not she was going to go through it. They needed fetal tissue body parts in this situation. She was locked in a room for 4 hours to quote, re-educate her and get her to go through the abortion. If the doctor himself needs these body parts to satisfy something that's going on in a relationship, like Curtis Boyd in the University of New Mexico. He's going to put undue pressure on these women to go through their abortion. Nobody really thinks about that at that level. But most of the women I see in my practice, and there's been studies out there that they have also confirmed this, are conflicted until the moment they get on that table. And since they're conflicted in that situation, the abortionist has the duty to act in their best interest. And if he's acting for his own interest, i.e. fame, profit, whatever it might be as a result of this fetal tissue, then he's not addressing the needs of the patient. And because he's not addressing the needs of the patient, we're seeing more and more and more abortions. Matter of fact, when we shut this down at the University of New Mexico, we saw a decline in abortions for the next 3 years up until just before COVID.
Wow. I mean, wow. Look at it right there. There's the evidence. I can't imagine anybody who considers themselves pro-choice or pro-abortion would argue with that, right? And in over 20 years on the sidewalk, I've heard rumblings of this happening. And I've even heard that they put more pressure on women who have babies at certain gestational ages because they need certain organs, right? That's what you're referencing for some of the experimentation that is taking place through some of the vendor relationships that they have, right? With some of these so-called medical advancement type companies. Is that fair?
Well, this was the university network that we dealt with in this situation. The university was literally pounding on Curtis Boyd's door saying, when are you going to get fetal tissue hearts next? I need hearts. I need them today. Can you get me them? I will come over and pick them up. It was a ghoulish, horrible thing that they were doing at the University of New Mexico. They're putting that pressure on these people to fulfill their fetal tissue research needs, because this is a $40-50 million industry just at the University of New Mexico. I imagine it's $1 billion industry across the world.
Unbelievable. So, Mike, let's back out for a second. Late-term abortion in America. There's a lot of people who says that it hasn't happened, that it isn't happening. From, somebody who has actually fought a late-term abortion program in arguably the most pro-abortion state in America, New Mexico. A lot of people don't realize how pro-abortion New Mexico has been, at least at one point, right? Can you talk a little bit about late-term abortion in America? And then how did you help to really shut it down in New Mexico? Like, trace that out for us.
Sure. In 2015, New Mexico, specifically Albuquerque, was the late-term abortion capital of the United States. We were running about 1,000 late-term abortions here. I know they were doing some up in Colorado, about 500. Back in 2015, Leroy Carhart was doing abortions in an outpatient clinic in Maryland. Also, you have Santangelo, you have the DuPont Center, that were all doing it at that particular time. There were a couple more practitioners that were out there, spotty here and there, would do late-term abortions in that time period. When I was doing the investigation in the fetal tissue research and representing women, I noticed something in the malpractice application that they filled out and they gave to me. And they said, our third trimester abortion insurance was canceled because it is too dangerous. That was a statement in way back in 15. So I prayed for a case at that time. I prayed, said, I need a case that I can go after late-term abortion on. Keisha Atkins died in February 17, February 4th of 17, and miraculously, that case came to me. So I got to litigate this issue. And I learned during this issue, this case of Keisha Atkins, that late-term abortion is patently, almost as a matter of law, unsafe in an outpatient clinic because you can't monitor the abortion during that time period. I went through thousands of hours of testimony of abortionists all over the country to put together this entire great package of a case to put together. And we finally settled that case. But after that case happened, what I noticed is Carhart stopped doing a little, not as many late-term abortions. Boyd stopped January 1st of 2023, and now Hearn has just stopped. I know Boyd can't get malpractice insurance. Now, what has happened since 2015 to now? 2015, we had after Tiller. It was a big thing that late-term abortion was happening. We had many late-term abortionists. Well, most of the late-term abortionists now are either dead or quit that were around at that time. Carhart passed away. Boyd, he's quit. We forced out Shannon Carr, his associate. She quit. Emily Cohen, she quit. Shelley Sella, who was involved in the Select Panel on Infant Lives and Planned Parenthood body part scandal, she quit. Carmen Landau died. Now Hearn has quit. And nobody's fulfilling these roles because they can't get malpractice insurance for some of these outpatient clinics. Now they're trying to revive it here in New Mexico. We're seeing a clinic called, what is it? Valley Abortion Group. They call themselves VAG. How awful that is. And they're trying to bring it back. I don't think they're having much success. We're seeing Alamo tried to have a little bit of success. Santangelo is still operating. Horvath in College Park, Maryland, and the DuPont Center is how would I put it? Putting in luxury abortions, late-term abortions. I mean, it's more of a spa treatment over there. So we have a couple of outliers, but the outpatient clinics are really declining. And I think we could get rid of every single solitary outpatient clinic because it is such a dangerous project to women. You cannot do an elective late-term abortion without exposing yourself to huge malpractice liability.
Yeah.
Now, where it has moved to is the Ryan residency program. And they won't do elective late-term abortions, but they will do abortions in all the universities in the country. They have 100 different programs across the nation right now. I just did a podcast for Life Issues Institute on this issue that came out today. There's 100 different programs out there that will do it, but that's going to cost somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 to do a late-term abortion. And they're only going to do it for medical or fetal anomalies. Now, the fetal anomaly they might do it for are cleft palates, which I don't consider a fetal anomaly. My co-counsel had cleft palates when he was growing up. So, I mean, that's perfectly fine. He's living a great life. Club feet, those are the type of things that they're doing these, quote, fetal anomaly abortions for. So, there's ample evidence that late-term abortion has existed, continues to exist, and will continue to exist into the future. But we can't stop it, especially at the outpatient level.
Yeah, yeah. And when we're talking about late-term abortion, Mike, we're talking about children that are, is it fair to say, in the third trimester of gestation, right, or close to, and then the procedure, which sometimes has been referred to as a stillbirth abortion or prostaglandin abortion. It's kind of taken on different terms. It is basically where you have a very pregnant woman who walks into one of these facilities, and yes, many times these are elective abortions, right, where there is an injection into the baby's heart or somewhere in the baby's body of digoxin that causes a form of cardiac arrest. The baby perishes at some point, and then the mother delivers the child stillbirth. And that can take place, if she can't get to the clinic, in a hotel, which many of these late-term facilities have contracts with. Is that a fair outline of the procedure and what we normally see?
It is. It's called an induction abortion.
Okay.
They're inducing labor, which is why we're having this abortion, number one, is beyond me, because if you think about it, the only thing they're doing other than inducing labor early is killing the baby. Why do you have to kill the baby to induce the labor early? It doesn't make any sense to me. However, that hotel room, they don't have maybe a contract with them, but they do have relationships with them, and the hotel rooms are out there. And matter of fact, there was a case here in New Mexico that we uncovered that in a deposition of a 13-year-old girl who was raped, and she was in a hotel, Howard Johnson, a wonderful place. And the doctor couldn't get back. She couldn't get back to the hotel room in time. She was doped up on Oxycontin and fentanyl and I think Versed. And they told her to leave the door open. She was there alone, 13 years old. The doctor came in, delivered the baby on the toilet, and then backed up the baby and left. And my big thing is they always say men don't have a right to talk about abortion. I'll tell you something. When I see a 13-year-old girl doped up on Versed, Oxycontin, and fentanyl, alone in a hotel room, giving birth to a stillborn on a toilet, I not only have the right, but I have the duty to act as a man in this situation to stop that procedure.
Gosh, amen. And Lord have mercy that we in the United States allow this. I mean, it's bad at any stage when you understand the beauty and the sanctity of human life. The fact that all of us started as an embryo and then we're a fetus and beyond, right? But the idea that the humanity of the baby is so apparent at these stages, and we can look at that baby still in these cases and say, you don't deserve to live or have a chance at life, even should you have something going on in the pregnancy, right? A fetal anomaly, a tough prenatal diagnosis, in which, again, by the way, we did record an episode with Beverly Jacobson a few episodes ago about how to help parents who've received news of a prenatal diagnosis choose life. So I encourage everybody to check that out, right? People love to point to that situation as, oh, this must be the exception. But a lot of these children, they go on to live, yes, sometimes short lives, sometimes surprisingly, the baby is fine and it was a misdiagnosis in the womb, or maybe baby does pass away just before or soon after birth. But even then, there's much less complicated grief. It's healthier for mother and child. I mean, to go through this procedure for any case, this is traumatic, right? I mean, that's what you've seen with the women that you've worked with, is that they were lied to about what this was really going to look like. And a lot of them too didn't give their full consent to possibly handing over their baby for experimentation. Is that fair to say, Mike?
Well, it was really interesting, and I'll give you an example on why it's so interesting. In November of 2015, as a result of what we were doing, they changed their consent form, and they said, okay, we are now going to say we're giving this to UNM. They gave a lot of examples, and they asked for consent of the women to do this. What
Wow.
was really interesting to see on the opposite side is once women were asked for consent, nobody gave them anything at all. They
Interesting.
didn't give them any consent whatsoever. So it's a
Yeah.
very material issue in your abortion cases that you aren't getting informed consent if they're taking your body parts and sending them all over the country. So, it's safe to say that I have never seen where these body parts have been given up for where they've been fully consented properly
Yeah.
into any university in the country.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that we have to look at. They like to say this is like, what is it called? Medical waste, and we can treat it as we want to treat it. But I think there's
Mhm.
a sufficient enough case law out there for the average attorney to file one of these cases. I would suggest that you get good counsel to figure out where the fetal tissue is, what the IRBs, institutional review boards, have authorized, those type of things. But you can bring these lawsuits under a variety of different theories.
Okay. And I would just say you would know as a medical malpractice attorney, right? What informed consent looks like for during a so-called medical procedure. I wouldn't call this a medical procedure. This is just some sort of barbarism. But even so, these women not really understanding what they're signing, and they may be under the influence of a medication, or they haven't gotten their minds around what they're really about to do, right?
And I do have a case right now, late term abortion, where she was on meth. The abortionist knew it, and now I'm suing for wrongful death of that baby. So we'll
Absolutely.
tell you how it turns out when we go there. But I want to be the first attorney in America to collect against an abortionist who terminated a baby supposedly legally, but inside of his clinic.
Wow. Godspeed on that, Mike. Amazing. Oh, well, earlier this season, I recorded an interview with a father whose girlfriend gave in to pressure to have a late term abortion. She aborted their daughter, Clementine, and then he found out that they sold her body parts. So I want to pause here really quickly and play his testimonial. Tommy is currently working to stop this. So let's go ahead and play that right now.
When she expressed her fears and her thoughts, they reassured her that these are normal thoughts and is perfectly fine. They reassured her that yes, it is legal to have an abortion at 20 weeks at their facility. And they reassured her that they were going to take care of her and asked her repeatedly if she was ready to schedule her appointment. Now, on that phone call, she explained to them, I don't have money. With this
Yeah.
being said, they now again continued to say, well, don't worry. There are many women just like you that don't have money, but we have funding.
Mm.
Now, at no point did they explain that funding was going to be birthing our daughter alive. At no point did they explain that funding was going to be donation or fetal tissue experiments or fetal organ harvesting. This was never explained to her on that phone call. We just knew that now our daughter was dead, and it was one question that really started this whole thing, and that was, well, where is her body? And with that question, we found out, well, this facility, they didn't want her money. She had no money. They wanted our daughter's organs. They wanted our daughter's body. They work with Advanced Bioscience Resources and Circle Allocation Services. Now, both of these companies are procurement agencies that are both owned by Linda Tracy. Now, Linda Tracy is a woman that had started these businesses in the 70s. There are children from the 1960s and 70s that till today are still being experimented on. So Clementine is not alone. At no point did anybody tell Clementine's mom, not on day 1 or day 2, that they were going to birth our daughter alive. On the first day of the procedure, and we mainly know this, yes, from Clementine's mother's testimony, but also from the medical documents. And I have all of the medical documents and all of the void consent forms notarized, every single page with every single thing that is wrong and every single law that is broken. The things that they did to my family, the mother of my child, from her written testimony and from the medical documents that truly speak for themselves, at no point was she aware that our daughter was going to be left alive. On the first day of the procedure.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. Godspeed, Tommy, in what you're doing to honor your daughter's memory. Mike, my question for you is, what is your best advice in shutting this down across America? How do we get these abortion facilities to quit getting these baby parts and doing experimentation and start looking at these children as children and giving them dignity? What would you say to that?
Well, there's a variety of things. Number one, I mean, we have 100 Ryan residencies all throughout the country, probably one in your neighborhood. Not in Texas. We don't have any in Texas, thank God, but they're trying to open some in Texas. So let's pray that they don't. But I mean, you see them at the University of Alabama, University of South Carolina has one. And there are 2 programs in South Carolina. There are 3 programs in Florida, in pro-life states. So why not start doing some investigations, poking around in this situation, asking around, sending some inspection of public records requests to your local universities to see what they're doing in this situation. That's one. Number 2, you guys are on the sidewalk every day. You're going to experience women who feel wronged overall. If they get adequate legal representation in this situation, somebody with subpoena power who can investigate all this, somebody who can bring a lawsuit in this situation, you got to get them to an attorney. You got to get them to an attorney that can investigate this all the way through, and send those type of things. Inform your legislatures, that you're seeing women that are complaining of this on the sidewalk. The legislators need to do an investigation. They truly helped us in the University of New Mexico. So there's plenty of things that you can do. And additionally, if these women are hurt, you definitely have to do something to help them in this situation. There are organizations that help women who are hurt. There are attorneys like myself who go all over the country who decide to sue on these cases. We can do some damage in this situation. So those are the things that we need to do. I mean, I'd be happy to assist any local organization who feels that there's fetal tissue research going on in their local university in this situation and send it out. I mean, University of San Diego is partnered with Planned Parenthood. So they don't sell it anymore. They partner in the research together. So Planned Parenthood owns the research at the University of San Diego and is in a partnership with the University of San Diego. I can't remember, University of California, San Diego, not USD, the Jesuit one, but University of California, San Diego. So, I mean, if we just do a little bit of investigation, we keep our eyes open, we can end fetal tissue in America. The other thing is we can end late-term abortion in America, especially in Maryland and in D.C. and in California. This is against the standard of care to have outpatient abortion. And we can put together letters in a campaign, and we plan to do this with some of the other pro-life organizations this summer, to end fetal tissue, end late-term abortion in this country. That will end fetal tissue in this country as well, because a lot of it comes from the late-term abortion. Although they will, I found this out in 2015, they'll do late-term abortion, not abortions, they'll do fetal tissue research on babies as soon as 8 weeks. The select panel on infant lives, we showed numerous 8-week old babies in this situation. So for me, 8 weeks, if they're taking somebody's baby's brain at 8 weeks, that shows that there is a life at 8 weeks. So I mean, these heartbeat laws are really consistent with that.
Yeah, we talk about this on the sidewalk a lot, right? Brain waves at 6 weeks, heart beating, usually at least at 21 days after conception, arms and legs, baby sucking his or her thumb by 8 weeks, many times, right? These are fully formed babies. They have all organs present and functioning at 8 weeks, right? And there is a market for this. Mike, I'm going to ask
Huge.
you, yeah, I'm going to ask you a dumb question in regards to that. Like, if there is such a grotesque, inhumane market for this, why isn't the abortion industry being held accountable? Where is the public on this?
Well, it's really interesting. The public, when they found out about the University of New Mexico, was appalled. And they put a
Yeah.
lot of pressure on the University of New Mexico. But a lot of people think that medical research is just something that we need to do. And this is an okay use of the medical research in this situation. They don't think about the consequences to the women. They don't think about the pressure they endure. They don't think about the humanity of the baby. They just think
Yeah.
abortion's abortion. One of the things that happened during the select panel on infant lives is we found that the Mind Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico, custom ordered a baby's brain between 24 and 28 weeks that digoxin was injected for use at a summer camp full of high school students.
Oh my
If
God.
we are teaching our children to kill children, how can we hold the public accountable?
Yeah.
And we had a significant outrage. There's a video of Paul Roth, the dean of the medical school, admitting that at that particular time. But this is the stuff that we are becoming desensitized to in America, that we can just go ahead and harvest a brain and show it off in front of high school students. High school students.
Yeah.
That's horrible. And, did they put pressure on the woman to harvest that brain? Probably. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the stuff that we have to look at in this situation. I think we're going to see a little less reliance on fetal tissue in the future. There's a variety of theories on that. They have existing cell lines. One of the things that I really am concerned about over the next 20 years is IVF. I think IVF is the perfect harvesting ground for stem cells for the next 20 to 30 years. I think you're going to see a move away from the university. There's not the regulation and oversight that you have at a university to sell those things. These embryos are being held and then, quote, disposed of. I would check the contracts at those IVF places to see if they have the right to donate that for fetal tissue research, for stem cell transplantation. They may have those rights. I don't know. I'm not familiar with, the IVF contracts, as nobody's brought them to me. But I think this is a concern that the pro-life movement has to have in the future. Is that where they're going to get the stem cells? Is that where they're going to get the research? Can they grow babies themselves right out of the discarded babies without your consent? I mean,
Wow.
we've seen the abuses in just the fetal tissue abortion side. And now we have IVF in this situation. The morality of this whole thing is questionable. And I think this is someplace we as pro-lifers have to at least delve into to see what is happening at these IVF clinics and what is happening to viable lives at those IVF clinics. I think there's a much less, in the past, we needed fetal tissue research to support our medical communities. I don't see that as much in the future if they can get that from IVF.
That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But we're not far from it. If you think about it, there's hundreds of thousands of embryos of human lives that are frozen right now in IVF clinics all over the United States and the world. And if they're just going to get discarded, if the parents are not going to implant those precious lives and continue those lives, right? Then there may be something at some point where parents can kind of, sign away their embryos for research. And then I'm sure we're not too far from, I'm just going to kind of go with this for a second, an artificial womb that would grow these embryos, right? And we would use those body parts and then discard the baby. I mean, or like you've referenced, doing stem cell research on those leftover embryos right now, right? I mean, this is not crazy.
It's not crazy and it's not far-fetched, or taking these cells themselves. We've already seen David DeLeiden has done a wonderful job documenting humanized mice, taking those
Yeah.
cells from those IVFs and injecting them into mice so they have humanized characteristics in those mice. I mean, we've already seen that. So, I mean, it's not too far off in the distant future that I can see that artificial womb. Definitely. I mean, we are still, during COVID, we use cell lines from 1972 abortions
Hmm.
to test against that are still around. Those cell lines are still around from 1972. I
Yeah.
mean, who knows what is going to go on in this situation? But I see fetal tissue research, IVF, blending into one gigantic legal mess in the future.
Yeah. Ooh, that's really good to have on our radar. And we're going to have to wrestle with a lot of bioethics going forward here, right? I mean, if we
Exactly.
really believe and know that these children are children, they are unique human lives deserving of life, a chance at life, and our protection, what are we doing, right? Would you do this on your 2-year-old who passed away, your 6-year-old who passed away? And we're not talking about organ donation where someone willingly gives the gift of life to somebody else. We're talking about the commoditization of our children, a market for body parts where we're discarding human lives and then using them as we will. This is kind of the brave new world. This is a scary thing for us to now have to wrestle with modern day, right?
It has been and it continues to be. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen this all the way back to the 1980s where it really started to proliferate in the abortion area. And
Yeah.
now with IVF, it's something that we really have to wrestle with. And we have to wrestle with the bodily autonomy of women as well.
Yeah.
I mean, and fathers like Clementine's father in this situation, because I mean, are those rights? We're seeing more and more fathers' rights as time goes on. So
Right.
we're going to have to look into these things in the future from a legal perspective. And I think we're just on the precipice of that entire argument for a variety of reasons, because medical research has been used. My son was a type 1 diabetic growing up,
Mm.
and I couldn't give to the JDRF because they used aborted body parts.
Mm.
And my local priest said, you can't do this.
Yeah.
They have been using those type of things to help diabetics, to help other people for a long period of time. They want to do this, and I can see a benefit, but I can also see the personal choice and the autonomy of the parents of that child in this situation,
Yeah.
and the rights of that parent to not be pressured, to not have to give up those body parts. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a really, really big question for future lawyers, I think, for many, many years to come.
Well, and we do have other options as far as medical experimentation. Like, there are ethical ways to garner stem cells to heal people. In fact, adult stem cell treatments have had really big success, right? Or
Right.
sometimes you can take something from the umbilical cord after a baby's born, the cord blood. There's all sorts of things that people are looking at and coming out with right now. But I think we've really got to look at the fact that this is a form of human trafficking, right? This is a form of human
Yes.
trafficking that's going on. And we have an ethical and moral duty to our children, to our posterity, and to really look at, does the end justify the means? That really seems to me to be the big debate. Mike, in closing here, anything else that you want to alert us to in the post Roe versus Wade landscape from where you sit? And then let me ask you this too. You have seen probably the darkest side of the darkest issue. I know that you have sat in hundreds of hours of depositions with late term abortionists and had to ask them question after question after question of how exactly they've done what they did, right? Why do you have hope as a Catholic Christian? What encourages you every day, even though I'm sure that you've had your hard days and listening to all of this? How would you encourage people forward?
So post Roe America, let me take this in the future. Post-Roe America is going to be done. The battle is going to be in the hospitals. The battle is going to be in the universities. They're already 20 years ahead of us. They have trained 7,000 abortionists in the last 20 years under the Ryan residency program to prescribe the abortion pill and do abortions at every stage all over this country.
Wow.
That's more than we've ever trained before in the past. They've normalized it. It's going into the AMA. It's going into the graduate medical education programs. This is a battle that's not just limited to Planned Parenthood. And so the universities are where they're going to infect the system in the future. They're gonna move it all out into the university and corporate systems, like Kaiser Health is already moving abortion all through all their satellites in Michigan. So, we see this, and I think we have to pay more attention to that, not just Planned Parenthood. We got to get rid of them. We got to defund them. We got to do all this other stuff, and we got to make sure they never practice again. But we got to go after the universities. Now, for the darkest areas of society, I'll tell you, I'm blessed. I got to do the greatest thing that a lawyer could do in his entire life. I got to fight a late-term abortionist, the worst in the country, the biggest abortionist in the country, and I got to win. I mean, I can't do any more as a lawyer in my life. I mean, I just took on the greatest evil.
It's all downhill from here, right?
Yeah, it's all downhill from here. I mean, I really enjoy, fighting this issue. And what people don't understand is I see these people every day. I mean, last week I was in depositions with abortionists as well. And, I see they're human beings, and I pray for them every day. And I would encourage every one of your people to pray for them as well, because we want them. As St. Basil says as a Catholic, God does not want sinners to die. He wants them to repent and enjoy life. And that would include eternal life. So please pray for them. And, that prayer keeps me going. Prayer keeps me going on a regular basis. I get down a lot. I'll tell you, it's a really dark world out there. And occasionally people see me being a little sharp and a little bit upset. It's usually because I'm dealing with something that I can't tell you guys all about. But, and I see the harm that is going on right now. But I mean, Jesus, I hate to say it, he's the healer of everything. I mean, when I get down there, it's like, okay, Jesus, I need some help. I mean, I need to pray, and you need to come into my life. And I've sort of accepted the fact that, maybe I didn't have the life I wanted in this situation. I wanted to be a big, successful lawyer. And it depends on your measure of success. And I would say this to your sidewalk advocates. You save one life, you save the entire world. I posted something about the time machine the other day and saving beautiful butterflies. In H.G. Wells' novel, The Time Machine, a man steps off the path and kills a butterfly and changes the entire future. Well, your sidewalk advocates, people like you and I, people who support us, you know what? If we save one life, we change the entire world. Yeah. Just imagine what could happen to that one particular life. It's going to have an effect that ripples throughout time. This is the only place in America where you, as a sidewalk advocate, as a pro-life advocate, can alter the course of the universe. And you have that chance. And you don't think God is going to take that chance when you save that life, to use that life to do something extraordinary somewhere down the line? I mean, you don't know the same God I do, because he will do that. So that's what keeps me encouraged.
Mike, that was one of the best speeches I've ever heard. That was so good. No, and
you can use that anytime, but yeah.
That's great. No, but in all seriousness, thank you for that reminder. I think sometimes we feel like we're in this massive David and Goliath battle, and there's so many babies dying, and there's so much darkness, and late term abortion, it's right in your face, right? Yeah. And yet we serve a God who is a God of victory. He is a God of life and family, and we bring his light out to the sidewalk, or we bring it into the courtroom, or whatever. It's powerful. And the reminder too, that these late-term abortionists are not the enemy. I want everybody to hear this. They are not the enemy. They've been deceived by the enemy. And all we have to do is look at the stories of former Planned Parenthood director Abby Johnson, former abortion worker Jules Green, former Planned Parenthood manager Catherine Adair, former abortion referral manager Ramona Trevino. We've got all these glory stories of these people who had their hands in abortion, and thousands of them at times, right? And came out the other side, and God has done something so powerful in their life. And now they have turned around and they are saving lives. And so again, I love being part of the resurrection. I love being part of the victory here, right? There's nothing like it. And much less the idea that you're storing up treasure in heaven, right? We believe that as believers, right? And so, Mike, I hope for our sake you somehow top the Curtis Boyd verdicts, but I don't know that you're going to, but I know that
I don't either.
I'm so grateful. I'm just grateful for your yes. Yeah.
He gave me a gift, by the way. In his latest book, he actually said that there was this pro-life attorney that caused him emotional distress that was and still is greater than he could ever imagine. So I have actually been acknowledged by the worst abortionist in the history of the United States as causing him emotional problems. So that'll tell you a little bit about my character.
Yeah. Well, you take life like he was taking life, and he deserved every bit of it. And
that's exactly.
Too, we pray that it's medicine. We pray that at some point it saves his life, because he doesn't have much time. He's in his 80s, isn't he?
He's 88 years old, but he's still pretty active and out there. I saw him in a couple of videos this past fall. He's still trying to do it, but let's pray for his salvation and his repentance, because if everybody does it, maybe it'll happen.
That's right. Well, Dr. Hearn just closed his late-term abortion business in Boulder, Colorado. I want to say he's 84 or thereabouts, right? Like you're saying, they're having trouble replacing themselves, but we got to keep an eye on the Ryan residency. So anyways, Mike, fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we're going to be on the sidelines over here cheering you on. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, closing thought. I so admire professionals like Mike. I hate even calling him a professional. Heroes like Mike, who take their vocations and professional skills seriously and use them as they can to defend the defenseless. When you do that, you may take hits from every side, including financially, but I believe, as I'm sure many of you do, that when we do that, we will be blessed by it in some profound way. And either way, what is more rewarding than knowing that someone lived or their memory was better respected because of your individual yes? Every single one of us can do something from where we sit. So my question to you is, what are you doing? What are you doing in the greatest human rights battle on earth? Can you get to the sidewalk and help moms in crisis? Get trained as a sidewalk advocate, right? Can you help a friend or family member experiencing an unexpected pregnancy? Some of you might even be called to this work full time. Maybe you need to be in a mobile unit as a nurse full time, or need to be in a pregnancy center or something related, right? What unique skills and services can you offer to this movement? And at the very least, we can all tithe or give of our precious treasure to an organization fighting the good fight. Everyone can do something. So I challenge us all today to make one small sacrifice in defense of these children and families who are being used and abused to benefit a sick, multi-billion-dollar dirty industry. We need you. We need your voice. We need your yes. Thank you again, Mike. And thank you to all of you for listening once again. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Laura Musica Show. We'll be back here next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central on Facebook Live, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Thanks so much, everybody.